Good morning everyone. In a recent video we spoke about fake power banks being sold online. When we opened it up we found what we thought were 18650 cells, but when we took one apart we discovered it's just full of sand. So this is actually a common scam and a lot of people are being fooled by this. So today I'm going to give you some advice on how you can make sure you get a genuine power bank and what features you should look for, whether it's a tiny little portable one like this or one of these larger power banks. Let's imagine I have this fan that plugs into the wall. Believe it or not, there are actually power banks that have AC power. So this is 220 volts. And there you go, my fan turns on just as though it was plugged into the wall. The biggest problem is that these kind of power banks that have an AC outlet are typically very expensive. But there's actually other ways of powering this fan from a regular power bank as long as it supports the specific fast charging protocol. So I have this little cable here. It looks like a cigarette lighter socket, but on the other end is a Type-C connector. I plug this in. And then we take an inverter that's designed to be used inside a car. Sorry about the balancing act here, but the cable is kind of short. So we turn this on, and there you go. We now have a regular power bank that is powering an inverter. And if we take our fan, let's turn it on. There you go. We've got the same thing, but we didn't have to pay for a very expensive power bank. We just got a regular power bank that supports fast charging. This one is up to 45 watts, but some of them go up to 65 or even 100 watts. So you do have to bear in mind the maximum output, but pretty cool, huh? Now, although it works, it's not something that I would recommend because going from DC to AC is kind of wasteful. And since we're working with power banks that have a limited amount of battery life, it's just not something I would recommend. Instead, I'd recommend buying some USB fans like this or this. The nice thing about these is they're rechargeable or you can run them directly from the power bank. This is actually my favorite because it has a lot of cool features. Firstly, it can actually oscillate. It can turn left to right. Let me show you. That's pretty cool, huh? Another thing you can do is it's extendable. So it's very easy because you can put it on the floor and use it like a regular stand fan. So these are much more efficient and this can actually still move a lot of air. But if you feel like you need something more powerful, you could buy something like this. This is a wall fan, but you can also get it as a stand fan. And this has a DC motor inside. The nice thing about that is I can run it from the wall if I want to, but I can also run it from a power bank directly. So again, I have a special cable. This is Type-C on one end, a DC barrel jack on the other, and it has a little chip inside that tells the power bank output 12 volts. So we have one end plugged into the power bank, the other end plugged into the wall fan, and then let's turn it on. You can see this also has an oscillate feature. It's basically like a regular wall fan, but it has a DC motor inside. It's a lot more efficient and we can easily run it from a power bank. In fact, one of the nice things about this Romoss power bank is it has a display that shows you how much power is being consumed. So you can see 12.1 volts, 1.1 amps. So just over 12 watts. That is very efficient considering how much air this thing is moving. If we put it on the top setting, you can see we're still at 12 volts, but the current is up to around 1.4, 1.5 amps. So really, this is the best thing to invest in because when you have power from the grid, you can just plug it into the wall using a regular AC 12 volt adapter. When you don't have power because there's a calamity or some kind of brownout for whatever reason, you can run it from a power bank. And if you're wondering, does it have to be a huge power bank? No, it can be one of these small ones. As long as it actually supports the fast charge protocol. Most of these power banks will support various fast charge, PD, QC, AFC, like all the different types. Let's unplug it and there you go, the fan will stop. Another thing people worry about is their internet, keeping their router going. We're going to use the exact same cable, plug it in the back, and the power bank will output 12 volts. So you can see it's booting up now. And that's a nice thing about these power banks that have fast charge. You can easily get 12 volts, and there's so many devices that run on 12 volts. Now this small power bank can only output up to 18 watts, but that's still quite a large amount. For example, I have this back massager which consumes around 10 to 15 watts depending how heavy you are. Let's turn that on. No problem. Put it up against a wall and then just relax. All powered by this little power bank here. Now of course another thing people worry about is lighting. So you can buy these little USB light bulbs. These are super cheap, like 50 pesos, $1. Just a regular USB port, plug it in, and there you go. You can get these in various brightnesses, and honestly when you don't have any power, these are actually very, very useful. So let's just go backwards for a moment and talk about how we can avoid fake power banks. For example, this one says it's Romoss, but obviously it's not, because this is a genuine Romoss power bank and they actually make very good quality products. The problem is there's a lot of scammers out there that are ripping off their brand, and the local shopping websites, honestly, they do not care. Even since my video, I reported it to the platform, I reported it to DTI, nothing happened. They're still selling thousands of these every week. So how can you avoid scams? Well, actually it's easy. Buy only from the official shop or the flagship shop. If you go to Lazada and type in Romoss, the first thing that will come up is Romoss flagship. If you go to Shopee and type in Romoss, the first thing that will come up is Romoss official. So only buy from an official store for that brand. You might think, oh, there's a mall seller that has a better price, and because they're a mall seller, that's safe. No, there's also mall sellers that are selling fake Romoss products. And it's not just Romoss, it's all the brands. It's Pineng, it's Anker, it's Ravpower, it's Aukey. There are so many fake products on those websites, and unfortunately there's no way to know until you receive the product. And even then, a lot of people don't realize. They just think, oh, it's a bad brand. But no, the brand is okay, it's just a lot of scammers online. The other thing is, when you receive a power bank, test it for a few days. Do not rush to click received and to leave a rating. Wait a few days, run it down, charge it up, run it down, test it a few times, because even big brands like Anker, Aukey, Ravpower, even Romoss, sometimes you can get a bad power bank even if it's genuine. So test it for a few days first before you click received and before you leave a rating. Now let's talk about what features you should be looking for in a power bank. When power banks first became popular, most of them only had 1 or 2 USB ports, and they could only output 5 volts 1 amp. Then over time they improved and they could output 2 amps, which they called fast charging. By today's standards, 5 volt 2 amp is not fast charging. Right now my camera doesn't even have a battery inside. Instead it's powered from this power bank, and if we take a look at the meter, you'll see it's actually running at 9 volts. And that's the nice thing about these modern power banks. They have boost converters inside. They can output 5 volts, 9 volts, 12 volts. This one can even output 20 volts to charge a laptop. And depending on the fast charge protocol, some of them can actually do incremental. So it could do 6 volts, 6.5, 7, and so on. So it's very, very important that you pick the right power bank. For example, if you have a recent iPhone that supports fast charging, you want to make sure your power bank supports fast charging. If you just have a regular power bank that can output 5 volts 2 amp, that's only 10 watts. If your power bank supports the Apple fast charging, you can charge much faster, and it won't be at 5 volts, it will typically be at 9 volts for Apple. Different phones charge at different voltages. If you look at this Romoss power bank, on the side it says 22.5 watts. That is the maximum it can output. If you read the fine print, what you'll see is that it's 5 amps at 4.5 volts. Now if your phone supports that, it is super fast charging. Not many phones support that. So typically what you're actually going to get out of a power bank like this is 18 watts, which is still fast, but the point is you have to read the small print. It's usually printed at the bottom of the power bank. You see here it lists all the different voltages that it supports, and you have to look up what quick charge protocol your phone supports. The nice thing is that pretty much every power bank that I'm buying right now supports Qualcomm quick charge, PD quick charge, AFC quick charge. So as long as you buy a good brand, you actually don't have to worry too much. I still recommend you read the print to see that it's compatible with your cell phone and the fast charge protocol that it's using. But it seems like most of the manufacturers, they're just building all of the fast charge protocols into their power banks. The way people used to power their router from a power bank is to use a boost converter cable like this. This actually has some circuitry built in that takes the 5 volts, boosts it to 12 volts, and then lets you power your router. The problem is these cannot handle much power, and typically they're not very efficient compared to a modern cable like this, which only has one tiny chip in, and all that chip does is tell the power bank output 12 volts. So you can actually get the maximum wattage, in this case up to 40 watts. So yes, go for fast charge, quick charge, but read the small print, because some people will take a power bank and they will say, oh, it's fast charge, 2 amps, 5 volts. That was fast charge like 5 years ago or 10 years ago. That's not fast charge nowadays. And here's a common mistake that people make with power banks. They think if my power bank is 60,000 milliamp hours and my cell phone has a 6,000 milliamp hour battery, I can charge it 10 times. It doesn't work like that. 60,000 milliamp hour rating is at the internal voltage of 3.7 volts. When you pull it out, you're taking it at 5 volts, 9 volts, 12 volts. Plus, there are some losses. Then when it goes into your cell phone, there are losses again. Now, I don't want this video to be too technical, so my only recommendation is don't focus so much on the milliamp hour rating, but more on the watt hours, because that removes the voltage from the equation. So yeah, just something that a lot of people get confused about, but it is important to know so you can actually assess how many charges this can give you. In the next video, we'll talk about USB chargers, whether it's tiny ones like this that have 2 ports or huge ones like this that have a lot of USB ports. If you're experiencing rolling brownouts, you want to recharge your power bank as quickly as possible. But if you're not in a rush, it's actually better to charge it slower, because the faster you charge it, the more wear you're putting onto the battery. So that's something that we'll cover in more detail on the next video.